Hello and welcome to the latest Breakthrough Events webinar in partnership with Santander and Smarta. Thank you everybody for joining me today for the webinar that we've got with the brilliant Will King. We have a title today of growing a challenger brand and then replacing yourself as CEO. Will's going to tell us all about that, share his stories and experiences of growing the brilliant King of Shaves, and his decision to ultimately then in the last year, after really growing the company for what must have seemed a lifetime as well, Will, to step away as CEO and bring in another CEO. And I think that's a fascinating subject for us to talk about when we're looking at taking a business to a next level and whether ultimately you're the right person to lead that business going forward. But without further ado, Will, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and obviously King of Shaves and why you started it? Give us the kind of the overview story of the business.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Thanks so many people for dialing in. My name's Will King. I guess reasonably famously founded King of Shaves, a challenger shaving brand, back in the day in the early 90s, following redundancy from my job in marketing, in a marketing services company. And it's been a fantastic journey. It's 22 years pretty much now, 23 next April. And seen a lot of things happen during that time, going from guys with suits and ties and no beards to then bearded hipsters in Shoreditch with lots of beards and everything in between. And in terms of the this session that we have here, one thing that is absolutely critical if you're going to not just start up your business but scale your business is to obviously build out the team around you, because as cool as you think you are and as much as you believe you can get done and believe that you're the best person at doing it, there are only 24 hours in a day. There is only one of you. And certainly to achieve escape velocity from start-up to scale-up and move from loss into profit, you need to build a great team around you. So if nothing else that you take away from this session, just remember this sort of hashtag, this little word that I coined, delegation, which is short for delegate to great people. And I was lucky enough, back in '95, a guy called Andy Hill got in touch with me. In fact, we met in Val d'Isère. I was skiing on a very cheap skiing holiday. He was renting snowboards. And long story short, he wrote to me and said, look, you're an ideas guy and you're a marketing guy and you're a bit crazy and creative, but you need a guy to put rubber on the road and to bring your ideas to life and to manufacture them and develop them and sell them. And he joined me 20 years ago in October, so just over 20 years ago. And when I stepped down as CEO last October, which I'll come on to, Andy was the natural choice to be the new King of Shaves. He had actually run KMI, the company I demerged King of Shaves out of, which also does Ted Baker and Fish Toiletries, quite a big company, as well as MD or General Manager, as he called himself, for 5 years. So, wherever you are in a business and whatever you want to do, it is just foolish to the point of stupidity just to absolutely build it around yourself and make yourself completely believe you're completely indispensable, because you're going to miss an absolute truckload of opportunities and different points of view. And for goodness sake, don't surround yourself with yes men or yes women, because that's another disaster waiting to happen. But it's all in the people you hire. Obviously, you've got to have a great product or a great service or a great brand or a great idea, but it's people who execute. It's people who make that happen. And surround yourself with A+ people, and you'll get A++. But if you hire B- people, you'll end up Z very, very quickly.
Great advice, Will. I want to hear a bit more about the kind of King of Shaves story as well. But I think whilst we're on this subject of kind of almost succession, when did you start to kind of put this plan into process? Was it a kind of a very long-term strategy? Did you realise for a significant period of time that you might step away?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously in that period of time, founded in '93, and then up until 2014, that's quite a long time. And I see and get involved in and get shown, and I'm interested in a lot of things. And I've been allowed by, what I did at King of Shaves to be part of other people's journeys as well. And if people follow King of Shaves as a brand, we remain independent. We've got quite a big strategic shareholder. The rest of the company is owned by family and friends, and I'm the biggest single shareholder in it. But we have an operating company which sells products to Tesco and online and to Boots and internationally. And then we also have a lot of IP, patents and intellectual property. And if people follow my Twitter, they'll see that yesterday I tweeted that, good to see Gillette following us with a lubricating cartridge 2 years after we launched our Hyperglide lubricating cartridge. And long story short, the value of the business and the brand is in the intellectual property and that portfolio, as well as the business itself and the profits it makes. And we have had, over all the many years, loads and loads of talks and discussions about investments or being bought out or strategic partnerships or IP deals or whatever. And as I sort of track towards 50, I was turned 50 in August. I founded the company at 27. I was just getting increasingly shown that, just loads and loads of other stuff, in alternative finance, in fintech, in different startup businesses, in different areas, helping people, mentoring people, doing entrepreneurial stuff. And when I chatted with my board, the view was that, whoever might ever end up buying or investing in King of Shaves, it's likely to be quite a big company. And I can't really see myself fitting into the world of Proctoids at Procter & Gamble, or Unilever or L'Oreal or Beiersdorf, or any of the big strategics. So, I've sort of made myself unemployable really by being relatively outspoken about what I do, why we do it, what's important. And we talked about it, and we remain in a sales/investment/IP process, which just goes on forever. We have a merchant bank retained, William Blair, who advises us. But I made it clear that I didn't want to be part of, the business going out the other side as the next big milestone being 60, so to speak. Hopefully it's a while away yet. So Andy was the natural guy to sort of lead the accession strategy, if we call it that, and that was what went out into the Sunday Telegraph back in October last year. And, to be honest with you, when you're running a business as a CEO, it's your business to keep the business looking to the future and, not necessarily doing all of the day-to-day stuff, shipping orders to Boots or dealing with trade promotions with Tesco. You have teams and people to do that. And Andy, was a natural guy to take that on, Matt. And, for the past year and 4 months or so, that's what he's done. And I'm sure he's enjoying it, and I'm, not that missed, although I miss my team, which is the biggest sort of loss, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to ask you, really. I mean, how has it been for you, and, what do you miss from that kind of hands-on role?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing, anybody who's founded and starts and scales a business and builds around them individuals, who become friends as well as, co-workers, and some of them join and then some of them go off to be CEOs or CMOs or CFOs or FDs of their own business. Obviously, over a number of years, you get used to seeing the same people in the business. We had a very low staff turnover there, in a handful of people over all the years. So I guess people enjoyed working there. But when you don't go in every day and then you just go in, let's say, for board meetings or for our strategic updates, or just drop in and see what's going on, it's still the same people. But obviously when you leave, it's like, leaving the family after you've seen them at Christmas, so to speak, and then you might not see them for the next, 2 or 3 weeks or month or so. So it's just a little different that you sort of miss the people that you grew the business with. Apart from that, with social media and with what goes on and what happens in the world and staying in touch, you are able to keep very close to the business and what's going on. And obviously at any time pick up the phone and speak to people and all of that good stuff, or on the Skype.
Yeah, absolutely. What kind of advice would you give, Will, to people that, perhaps haven't been running the company for kind of, 21 years, but maybe 3 or 4 years, and are now kind of trying to figure out whether they're the right people to take it forward?
Yeah, so look, the growth of any business, especially if it's a founder-run business, it will rest with the founder, certainly pretty much for the first 5 to 10 years. Typically any business, it goes through the 5 years valley of death, Matt, where you're starting up, you might be making losses for a while, whether it's months or years. You then start to turn a profit, and you'll start to scale the business up into hopefully the hundreds of thousands or the millions of pounds of revenue. And people will look to you to deliver that growth. They'll look to you to make the key decisions. It's important that you have a balancing partner in the business of a similar level as you, but not obviously your skill set. So my founding partner was an ex-management consultant, and Andy Hill, Andy was a mechanical engineer, and he was a very practical sort of yes or no, right or wrong guy. And let's just assume the business scales. Let's assume you start to go a bit international. Let's assume that you're getting quite a few people on the payroll. Then it goes from being, let's say, a founder-led business with a relatively tight ecosystem of people to potentially something with hundreds of people in it. And then, of course, you have the whole delegation layers. You have what the business is expected to do and who's delivering it. You probably put in some sort of people management person. I think that's what Sarah Wood at Unruly calls her head of HR as such. And
yeah.
You do move from being, let's say, founder entrepreneurial to entrepreneurial administrative. And obviously what entrepreneurs really don't like is a lot of administration. A lot of the excitement of the business is in closing a deal or launching a product or getting the publicity or developing the market. And therefore you look back and you build out around you perhaps a general manager, or which is what Andy would have called himself, or I'd call him a COO, Chief Operating Officer. You need a quality person on the numbers, an FD or CFO, and then you need the balanced team underneath these guys who are all, rowing in the same direction. So you'll know it, the day you start not enjoying running your growing business and you think somebody else could do a better job at it, then that's, you take advice from people and perhaps, look at the types of people who would work well in your business.
Absolutely. And I think the types of people is an interesting question as well, right? So what kind of advice would you give to identifying those opposite skill sets and I guess the right characteristics to kind of support you when you're growing that business? Do you buy into the kind of like the Myers-Briggs type indicators, or is it a bit more of a hunch for you?
Yeah, I would say that my hiring-firing ratio is kind of good, but I've had a few zingers in there which were a little bit not, I shouldn't have done. To be honest with you, look, you're going to spend your life with these people, and in a small company, it's pretty soon how good or bad they are. There's nowhere to hide in a small company. It's not working in a massive organisation where you can be tucked away and keep your head down and maybe, be average in your work. In a very dynamic entrepreneurial environment like King of Shades is and was, it's, you're either rated or slated, and that's internally by the team, and it's very quick whether or not somebody's fitting in. So, to be honest with you, when you've got a business and it's growing and it's developing, and people want to people want to be with you, Matt, and they approach you and they want to work with you.
Yeah.
And a lot of that, especially when they see the brand and the opportunity. I mean, we had so many people incoming who wants to work with us, from big companies like Unilever and Procter & Gamble and Nivea and L'Oreal, to people who literally just wrote me a letter and said, could we join your team, and wouldn't it be great to do it? So I don't think we ever used a recruitment agency in all of our life. We worked with one lady specifically who hired us a good CFO post demerger, but that was almost on a one-on-one basis, and it was very explicitly sort of briefed for this sort of financial director headhunter at the time to go and find us the sort of person we needed.
And how about then is your role as leader of that senior management team? I mean, I hear horror stories of CFOs and COOs being brought in, but then there's the CEO not being able to let go or delegate or give them the control they need to run the business. So what would be your advice of having built that senior management team for smooth running, and I guess for them to be able to do their stuff?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, there are two parts to that. First of all, it's pointless you bringing somebody else in on, say, a £50,000 to £150,000 package if you're then going to overrule them. So you clearly need to have confidence in who they are and what they're bringing in, and give them the freedom to do it. And for sure, that's been one of my strengths, is the ability to hire and then step back and then help and, work together to deliver on the outcome. So that's, really key. The second part for me, I guess, is one of my very first sort of careers or jobs was teaching sailing back at the National Sailing Centre when I was 16, 17, 18. I was the UK's youngest sailing instructor. So if anybody sailed in a dinghy or on a sailing course, and let's say you're out in the middle of the Solent between the Isle of Wight and Hampshire, when you're running a course, you might have 15, 20 dinghies. In each of those dinghies, you'd have 15 instructors with 3 students. You'll have a number of other instructors and safety boats, and somehow you've got to teach the students to sail. But you're not in these boats. You're running the course. So pretty early on, I was exposed to the importance of finding and then working with really good sailing instructors. And if they didn't meet my standard, and I was little, I was young, but I guess I was old beyond my years. A lot of my peers then were in their 20s and, late 20s, which seemed old to me. But when you're 17 or 18, I guess mid-20s is old. And I was able to quite early on understand that if you didn't hire great people and step back and let them teach kids to sail, there's no way you'd be able to teach them in your rescue boat. So that was, the lesson learned over 3 or 4 years. And when I came to build King of Shades up and out, and then the work I do now, my entrepreneur in residence sort of company / consultancy, it's very clear, when you see somebody and they're right or wrong or this or that. Obviously, it's not clear for everybody. Otherwise, we'd all be great managers and great delegators. But for sure, for me, it was one of my sort of skill sets, Matt, that I was able to leverage at a relatively young age at 27 and build out a great team.
Superb. Take us back to that time of being 27 and starting the business. Did you ever envisage it would get to the size that it did now? Did you set off with that ambition? It's a difficult one. I've been asked it so many times. I think, look, I've been made redundant. I raised some money. I didn't like shaving. I've studied engineering, worked out oil lubricated, obviously not engine oil on your face, but exotic essential oils like Body Shop was selling, shaved with it. The business plan was on the basis it worked for me, and I didn't get razor burn. This is like 1992, 93. There might be other men out there getting razor burn, and I could help them enjoy shaving rather than endure it. And that was essentially that was the gut feeling about the business. Now, of course, I raised 15,000 quid. I wrote a business plan, which obviously didn't make any relevance to sense at all to what happened. But I did know that
for the business brand to succeed, I needed some quality stockists, one in terms of quality and one in quantity, and that was Harrods and Boots. And then I knew I needed, awareness of it. So I sold 10% of the business to fund a PR campaign for £10,000 back in 94, 95. That then got us into the Mail on Sunday. That then introduced us to Will Carling, who was then the captain of the England rugby team. And signing him for £8,000 in the first year got us into Tesco, and suddenly you started joining the dots up from stockists from one being Harrods to 250 Boots to 500 Boots and 250 Tesco, and multiplied it up into the thousands, and then the revenues followed because people bought the product and it worked. And amazingly today, 22 odd years later, we still have pretty much 100% of the UK shaving oil market, which is in the millions, and 100% of the tube shaving gel market, which is in the millions too. And incredibly, we've been able to hang on to that position despite being up against well-funded competitors who spend absolutely tens of millions into the space. But, it's one of those things, Matt. It's got to be a great product. Your timing has got to be right. You've got to really run at it for years and years. And then, hope that you've hit the market at the right time in the right way. And in the early 90s, men's grooming was simply a can of shaving foam from Colgate with a rusty bottom. It was a double-edged razor, maybe from Wilkinson's Sword. And it was a body spray brand for young kids called Lynx with Africa. And that was pretty much the men's grooming space. And you look at it now, there will be hundreds, if not thousands, of brands out there, from boutique beard oils up to, the L'Oreal Men Experts, the Nivea for Men's, King of Shaves, and the Gillette in the space. So it's changed hugely.
And do you remember was there a specific time when you realised that those kind of the bigger brands with the more money, the Gillettes, etc., would start to take you seriously? And how did you recognise that?
Yeah, I mean, again, we were kind of lucky because we launched in 93. The internet came along in 95 and we bought shave.com, and we were first on that by a country mile compared to our competitors. Gillette makes most of its money out of razor blades, which we didn't even look into from a market sector until 2003, didn't launch into it until 2007. Nivea for Men didn't exist, L'Oreal Men Expert didn't exist, Colgate-Palmolive sold rusty cans of shaving foam. So, to be honest with you, we went into a market which you think, well, there's no chance of you succeeding because Gillette's in it. I had no idea how big Gillette was or wasn't. I mean, I knew it was big, but no idea because you didn't know how big it was, because Google didn't exist where you could Google what's the sales of Gillette worldwide. And we got into a space where pretty much for 5 to 8 years, we had it our own way. And in that time came across a brand called Ted Baker, then doing £14 million a year, signed a licensing deal with Ray Kelvin, the CEO, to launch a fragrance. That's now nearly £1 billion market cap business. And the sales of that Ted Baker range of products, licensed and sub-licensed at Boots and department stores, is around about £29 million a year. But Ted Baker in 95, 96, people would have gone, who's Ted Baker? So the timing's key. I mean, one thing I think is worth the audience taking into account is now it's never been easy to start a business, and it genuinely hasn't. You can pretty much get one up and going pretty quick, whatever it is, especially in the service sector side or in online sales. But if it's easy for you, it's easy for everybody, not just here, but around the world. So the competition in business has probably never been harder because there's so many people who are looking at a career as an entrepreneur and then scaling their startup.
Do you think that's been your biggest challenge in growing the business? And I'm thinking probably in the last 5 to 10 years. What have been the biggest challenges for getting the company to where you were happy to step away?
Yeah, I mean, so us getting into the razor and blade business, I mean, looking back on it now, it's 12 years ago, we first filed a trademark, King of Blades. Marketing Week picked up on it, splashed it on the cover, King of Shades going up against Gillette. You know, the founder of Gillette's first name was Christian name was King, by the way, King Camp Gillette. And for one reason or another, I sort of went off on a bit of a crusade around, could my team and I, with hundreds of thousands of pounds rising into the low millions, build out a razor and intellectual property position that could, at some time in the future, have a substantial value for the business and give us a razor and shave prep combination, which could compete with Wilkinson Sword and Gillette. And, you know, that's really, I put myself into pretty much exclusively 05 to 09. And that's when Andy took over as KMI MD, when we were pre-demerger running King of Shades, Ted Baker, Fish and other brands we had. And when we demerged, I went back into a CEO role because I'd raised, you know, was raising so much money and was aiming to, you know, build out this position. It was, you know, it's been a massive journey. I mean, it's not finished yet, in as much we have patents that aren't visible yet, that we filed a year and a half or so ago. Again, going back to what's going on in the world of razors and blades, you've got Dollar Shave and Harry's going on in the US, making massive losses, but growing apparently their customer numbers and valued in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And you've got more, let's say, sensible or different people like us in the UK, the hybrid model, which is a mixture of online sales and big retail sales like Boots and Tesco. So it's, you know, it's been, I guess I always want to work on stuff that I'm passionate about and I love doing. And at the end of days, I'm a product guy and I'm a reasonably creative guy. So I've had a lot of involvement in other sort of creative sectors. I'm married to a very creative wife, Tiger Savage, who's creative director at Saatchi's and did the Links Effect at BBH. And if I've got a passion, I'll work on it. And, you know, but the business needs change. And I think going back to me stepping down a year ago, we filed a lot of interesting IP. The value of that was only going to come out in future years. So one of our key patents runs out in 2031. So I'll be like in my mid-60s. And the key for me now is to put in place the strategic partnerships to monetize those bits of IP, obviously to the shareholders and to my advantage and keep the brand going and all that stuff.
Thanks, Will. We've got a couple of questions that have come through already, and I would just encourage you all to add your questions to the Q&A box at the bottom of your screens. Do fill those in, and we'll make sure that Will and myself get to answer as many of them as possible. So please do put your questions in there. Just before we go on to questions, Will, you are a product guy. Talk to us about the new businesses that you have launched. I'm interested to hear about them and where you're going into that space, which spaces you see as opportunities, really.
Yeah. So what I sort of do now is I have a little business called Entrepreneur in Residence Company, which is at their.co. And a friend of mine, Simon Devonshire, he became an entrepreneur in residence at Government Department Business Innovation Skills. And I thought, that'd be quite cool. I could not be a management consultant. I could put some entrepreneur smarts into what's called the C-suite, which is this chief executive, commercial director, chief financial officer, chief marketing officer levels, and looked into a number of sectors. So one of the areas that interests me quite a lot is the alternative finance sector. So King of Shades did a shaving bond, a retail mini bond 6 years ago. Around about £1 billion has now been transacted in that type of debt instrument. So I'm EIR at a London law firm, Memory Crystal, who specialise in those types of advice, and then also entrepreneurs and mid-market companies. Then I work with a number of founders, CEOs of companies in that space. So one's in insurance tech, InsTech. One's in the whole P2P crowdfunding space. I worked for a couple of months with the CEO of a company called FutureGov, who puts digital technology into local government. So we've obviously got a lot of austerity coming down the track. We're trying to make local government more efficient and cost effective. I'm advising a US company on the technology innovation that they're working on. I'm working with Tiger, my wife, on the launch of a designer jeans brand. I'm also advising an e-commerce platform called Conga at congadeal.com that's launching shortly, which is a twist on, it's bringing up to speed what eBay kind of did 20 years ago with a nice little twist on it, and that's been done by an ex-NASA rocket scientist. And then there's all manner of other companies that I look at, sometimes by myself, sometimes with some of my entrepreneurial mates, whilst I continue, deciding what to do, if anything, next, having, stepped away from King of Shades. And I know so many founders who sell their businesses and then kind of wish they didn't sell their business and then wonder what they're going to do and then try and reprise their success. But I don't want to be one of those. But I do know that I've got one last sort of macro, decent, big shot in me to look at a sector and hopefully bring to it the level of improvement and change and innovation and development and kind of disruption that we did in shaving, where King of Shades is viewed as the standout challenger, disrupting, market sector changing brand of its genre. And so, lots of things interest. I'm even looking at something which is a flip around Uber, which is, interesting.
Yeah, for sure. So if you're making a criteria of an investment or a sector you're going for, have you got like a little checklist that you're looking for that you think, well, that has to tick these boxes?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite easy, really. I mean, it's people. Second, it's, how unique is it? And, how easily copyable is it? Having seen all of our innovations pretty much be copied by our competitors, if they're not patented. And then how scalable is it? So I'm happy to work with people who are running relatively small /lifestyle businesses, but I'm more interested and get structurally involved in equity or remuneration stuff if it's scalable. And a couple of the things that I'm looking at, which are in the energy harvesting, generation, digital asset management, Internet of Things space, and another technology disruptor, those look very scalable, the people look good, and therefore it's something different from, I'll never, shoot me if I do, try and do a successor to King of Shades, let's call it, Prince of Shades, ever again, because I've kind of done that and it's been amazing, and we've shaved 7 billion lives and we shave 500 million guys' faces each year. But there's a big old wide world out there, and there's lots of opportunity in it and lots of stuff to do.
It certainly is, well. I have a guy who is just setting out now. He's asked a question. It's Stephen Daniels, and he runs a company, let me get this right, called Just Right Products, and he has a product called Whatnot. I'm just trying to read through the question. He is looking for investment at the moment, and already has a first retailer on board, Screwfix, so a really good deal. Nice big name. He is asking what your advice would be for bringing in a partner and finding the right partner to take the business forward, and then also for fundraising as well. Do we have any advice for him?
What sort of size is his business at the moment? Do you know?
I'm fairly sure it's quite small. I think so. I think they're just starting off. They have. I think it's a knot basically. It's something. It's a strap that ties. That is an alternative to kind of bungee type straps. So I think it's a lot safer, and it fills a gap where stuff that wouldn't have met health and safety for the Royal Navy or any of those organisations. It's an innovation, I guess, in the not space.
Sure. Okay, so I mean, look, if it's a product, you need to identify the market for it, and then you need to sell the product. So, in all the King of Shades days, I opened all the major national accounts from Harrods through to the last one being Asda. But along the way, I employed a sales agency who actually paid them £200,000 on sales of £2 million at 10% commission to deliver our sales. But what they did with our King of Shades trademark brand and our products is that they got us sold. So the key thing for your the guy that you're talking about, if he has a product, it needs to get sold, and it needs to get sold at scale. Okay?
Yeah.
If it's a patented or patent pending product, then that's slightly different because you can take a view that you'll have some IP protection on it. But the best way to defend yourself in the market is to have a brand name out there, to be known for what that brand name does, and then to sell the hell out of it. So you actually start to make sales and profits, and then you can grow it. So from his perspective, clearly he'll need somebody to head up, the making of the product side, whether it's outsourced or if it's outsourced, to manage that relationship with the manufacturer. And he'll need somebody maybe to work alongside him, depending on the markets, to get the product sold. And people forget, nothing starts in the world without a product being sold. I wouldn't be on the phone with you today if you hadn't rang up and said, will you go on the phone with me today? Well, I'm not being paid for it, which is absolutely fine. It's a pleasure. But it's people underestimate not only how hard it is to get that first sale, but how long it will take for you to scale it. And then obviously around that, you just need the administration wrap in terms of people who, once sales are coming in, can keep the customers happy, because that's always really good, both the trade customers and the end users. And if it's a really clever product, and if it has consumer sort of appeal, great way to demonstrate these sort of products is to try and get onto QVC, where every time I go on there with our Hyperglide Rave and shave just with water, in a 5-minute slot, we might sell £25,000 of the product, which is kind of cool.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm sure that's brilliant advice for Stephen. We have another question. It is from Chris Wheeler. And guys, keep putting your questions in the questions box. We have about 20 minutes or so of time left with Will, so make sure you get your questions in there so we can cover them. Chris runs a company called Consultancy. We don't know what they do, but he asks about the recruiting and the finding of CEO and COOs. And he is talking specifically around costs. So how do you ensure that the individuals you hire are the right people, and how long does the recruitment process last for, so that you are limiting any costs that are involved? Yeah.
Fine. So, hi Chris, I actually saw your question posted, easy to find sailing instructors and CEOs and COOs. It's not actually. I mean, there are a lot of rubbish sailing instructors out there that you have to be quite ruthless in not letting them teach kids to sail. But that's just a side there. Look, in terms of building out your management team, what people really want to know is what it is they're going to be doing, why they're doing it, and they will look at it, what's in it for me, because it is work, and then finally, what the fit is with you. And I've no idea how big Ab Consortia is, but if you're talking about hiring in chief executive officers, chief operating officers, your salary bracket is going to be a 6-figure sum. It may have options or some sort of equity involvement package attached to it. It's a chunk of change. If you go through a headhunter or recruitment agency, they'll be hitting you for 20 to 30% of that salary. So what you need to be very clear about is the level of person you want, the sector that they're going to be operating in, you try and do as much research as you can around people who are in that sector. One of my big no-nos at KOS was we had loads of people who wanted to join us from big companies. I'd love to be an entrepreneurial COO and work with you and change the world just like you've done, out of let's say a P&G size business. And these people live in a completely different reality to the reality you're going to inject them in, where they have all manner of support, all manner of budgets, all manner of assistance, all manner of opportunity to delegate to other people to get work done. And they come into a hard-charging entrepreneur environment where they're expected to deliver. And those have been my two bad macro hires, where all these guys could do was drive spreadsheets and hire people to do work for them and not actually deliver anything. And both of those, luckily, well, not luckily, the terms of employment were such that we were able to reach a mutual conclusion pretty quick. It wasn't working. So it just goes down to being very, very detailed on what you expect people to do and what you're going to pay them. And the old saying, pay peanuts, get monkeys, rings true, I'm afraid. But also paying people stupid money on the basis they're ex-big company, that's also a recipe for disaster. Hope that answers your question.
So, guys, keep the questions coming. I can see that we've got one from Floriet Malakari. I hope I pronounced that right. I'm almost certain that I didn't. And Floriet asks, Will, do you have any advice for a brand wanting to execute a subscription business model? Our lingerie brand is currently pre-launch, aiming to launch in autumn 2016.
Sorry, I just missed that. What type of brand is it? What sort of product?
It's a lingerie business. So it's a lingerie brand.
Lingerie?
Currently.
Yeah. Very Smarta. Lovely. Victoria's Secrets, what can I say? What sort of advice?
So she's asked for advice for a brand wanting to execute a subscription business model.
Wow. Okay. So look, everybody's in love with this whole subscription business model. And if I just sort of explain how all of this works and so people can manage their expectations here, it looks really good because what you have is people buying product off you every month. You debit their credit cards, you send them that product, they tell their friends, everyone's a winner. The actual complexity around the back end, which is the website, and also then what's the killer in this is the pick, pack, post cost. Then the cost of getting the brand out there via whether it's social advertising, Google SEO, AdWords, or whatever. And then the actual subscription service itself being taken up by hopefully thousands of people, not just 5 or 10 people a month or a few hundred. For subscription businesses, there needs to be an element of need for them. Okay, so the biggest ones on the planet are nappies or diapers, as they're called in the US, tampons, contact lenses, razors, which I'll come on to, and obviously I've got other sort of like sampling packs, which companies like Birchbox do. They send out products to people every month, and it's a little surprise. That's a little more involved, that model there, but you can see how that works online. But going, for example, whether it's lingerie or razors, guys shave, they run out of blades, they need new blades, we send them to them through the post. Great. The margin is okay. It's not as big as you might think it is, and it's not as profitable as you might think it is. But it does allow us to speak with the consumer directly without the consumer going into a retailer like Boots or Tesco. So that's good in terms of comms. The big ones in the States, I'll give you an idea, Dollar Shave's losing between $7 to $10 million a month with its 2 million installed base, and that's why it's raised $234 million, because it's got to break even. So the killer thing on any e-commerce business is your shopping basket being heavy enough to cover off the cost of the pick, pack, post and your margin, which is normally north of 10 quid. And at King & Shaves, we try to hit a 15 to 20 quid shopping basket if we can. So we might actually lose money on our simple razor blade subscription at £3 to £4 to £5, £10 a month, but we'll start to make money above that. When it comes to lingerie, I've no idea how a lingerie sub-model would work. I'm guessing the people are thinking new pants every month, new flavours, new designs, new this, new that. I would say research that market very thoroughly and look at if it's such a good idea. Are Bill Avenue doing it? Are La Perla doing it? Are Walford doing it? Is ASOS doing it? All of these people out there, rather than just setting off blindly on the assumption that people will sign up for some lacy pants through the post each month. So look at that carefully.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to suit not just the product but the audience demand, right? Well, and well, if the demand's not there to acquire something on a monthly basis, or the actual need isn't.
Yeah, I mean the classic one is there a market in the gap? So there's so many people say, why haven't you done this at King of Shades, or why haven't you done this or that, or what about this, or what about that? And what you've got to look at is there a genuine market in the gap you're looking at? So when we did a shaving oil back in the day, men often suffered from razor burn. You had a can of chemical shave foam. That was your solution. And I suffered from razor burn, shaved with oil, didn't get razor burn. And we launched an oil, which was the first and is still the biggest, 20 years ago. You'd be barking if you tried to launch a shaving oil now, or even a beard oil, to be honest with you, because you've got to get from me the hundreds of thousands of fans of our brand and business built up over 20 years to go with you. And unless it's some sort of incredibly remarkable product, in the world of shaving, remember, you wash this stuff off afterwards, so it doesn't have that much benefit post-shave. That's why you have moisturisers and things like that. It would be a bit crazy. But 20 years ago, if you'd have come up with an idea for a shaving oil, you'd be onto something. So what I look out for now, and anybody should do, is you're like a surfer, and you're trying to position yourself ahead of a big wave coming in, not so far ahead of it just passes underneath you, but not so far in front of, just behind it, where it crashes and burns you. And that's, there's a lot of timing and effort and research into that timing there.
We're sort of into the last 10 minutes now. Well, there's one thing I'd love to know a little bit more about King of Shaves, and then I've got a question about the stuff that you're working on now as well. King of Shaves first. Could you just talk to us, because I know a lot of the businesses that are listening in and through the Santander Breakthrough Program is a really important component of that is importing and exporting. Can you talk to us about the kind of the process of tackling the overseas markets with King of Shaves, and also why I believe that you continue to keep much of the manufacturing in the UK?
Yeah, so firstly, let's talk about the manufacturing side. We've 99% over our 21 years have made King of Shaves in the UK. And that's because we didn't have any contacts overseas. Things like Alibaba on the internet didn't exist. You didn't really know who you'd be dealing with. You'd have to raise, back in the day, what I call letters of credit, which is essentially a guarantee you will pay for the products you're bringing in. We, about 12, 13 years ago, had some tubes for our shaving gel made in China, which were 6 weeks on the water, as they say, and then turned out to be filled, and we couldn't fill them because the quality was no good. So in all of that, we've made as much as we can in the UK. And that is what's called reshoring of manufacturing has now happened massively. 13 years ago, China was a very mandrolic economy, i.e. you had lots of people that they didn't pay much money making stuff for you. Now it's kind of the reverse, where so much of stuff is automated and machine done, and therefore it makes little or no sense to have it made overseas than it does here. So where possible, stay close to your supply chain. If you're launching a range of socks for an audience of city I don't know, financiers, it'd be great to get them made in, the right part of the UK and sold in the UK, and then you keep the value chain in the UK. That's, I know that's not always possible, given what goes on in fashion, for example, but do a lot of investigation first. When it comes to exporting, the potential for you to lose a lot of money is always there. When something leaves this country and goes and gets sold around the world, whether it's Australia, New Zealand, America, Japan, markets that King of Shades is in, you're not in that country. You don't really know what's going on. You can only keep tabs on it by what's being said about it in social. You need to be working with, a strong partner who you trust. You need to get out there and get in market, look into all of the UKTI visits and the infrastructure they help provide. And when you're exporting, people will demand a low price because they've got to mark, if you're a distributor, you've got to mark it up, sell it onto a retailer who marks it up, sells it on. In America, you then add tax post-purchase. So if your margins are, not north of 50%, you're already a bit stuffed. So there's a lot of things to look at around export, but clearly there are big opportunities. But America is the graveyard of British brands, with the exception of Adele, of course, who seems to have nailed it, easily. Pretty much only Dyson has succeeded there in a really big way. We've done okay at King of Shades, but nothing compared to sort of what we do in the UK and in other markets. It's tough out there, and what you've got to do is to get your house in order here first, build up to the maximum market size you can in the UK, and then if you get overseas demand, then look at it very closely. That would be my advice.
Thanks, Will. Final question, just before we wrap up. Could you tell us a little bit more about Entrepreneur in Residence and how the people listening on the call that are looking at that kind of C-level recruitment could perhaps work with you guys to advance their businesses?
Oh, you're going to pimp my business for me a little bit there, Matt. I love you. Yeah, I mean, people, if you're listening in, if you have a look at a website, www.their.co, there's a short summation there of what I do with me and others, and then there's a short form you can fill out there. And if you read that and sort of read between the lines and think, okay, you can send me a note. I mean, a lot of stuff, advice, where I can, I try to give it without any sort of commercial attachment to it, but I can't always do that, obviously. And there is a value to advice, and there is a value to helping people. If you're on LinkedIn, I write a series of what are kind of reasonably well-regarded posts at brandroyalty.com, which is simply a series of posts there on things that interest me. The one I would recommend to your audience is, in fact, there's two. There's one which is around marketing called Champagne Taste Beer Money, where people spend everything else apart from actually on what they need to put fuel in their car to sell a product. Big fail. And then secondly, one about CEO and why somebody like me is a useful sort of sounding board if you are a founder or a CEO, to give you a slightly different perspective and a balance. But it's, to be honest with you, I'm not that hard to track down. I am on Twitter. I am William King. The King of Shadesy one is at King of Shades, and I co-author that occasionally. But, the key, Matt, is knowledge. And it's then everything that goes with it in terms of entrepreneurialism, passion, persistence. But going back to scaling and perhaps standing back from your business, you do need to get a great team around you. And there's one company I'm working with at the moment where they had a great team, and there's been a mild sort of falling out between essentially the co-founders, although one's more, deep in the business than the other. And I'm hoping to have brokered a rapprochement between them, because it would be a real shame, given where their business is and it's just about to go explosive, if there was those two guys stopped working together. So there's all manner of stuff I do.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for your time this afternoon. It's been fascinating, and I'm sure that everybody listening in has taken.
Happy Christmas, everybody, and have a superb 2016. Thanks very much for dialing in. Appreciate it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Will, and absolutely thank you, everybody, for dialing in. This has been a breakthrough event webinar in partnership with Santander and Smarta, and we will be in touch when we've got any future events to communicate with you. But thanks very much for listening in. We'll make this available on YouTube and send you all a link so you can listen in afterwards. And Merry Christmas. So thanks all.
Merry Christmas. Thanks, Matt. Bye-bye, everybody.